and Afaf Nasher, Executive Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. Thanks to all of you for being here.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Congressman, at the highest level, you and your colleagues have just said this is racist, and you enshrined that this week, taking that unusual step to rebuke Donald Trump. At a more granular level, it does seem that it got out of hand even for Trump. What does it mean to you that he tried to back away and at times lie about what he did this week?
Well, in my view, there may have been some individuals close to him saying this is getting out of control, and for at least 24 hours, he walked things back, and then he walked back the walk back.
Right.
And at the end of the day, that shows you that he is who he is. He cannot help himself. And it is a part of Donald Trump as an individual to peddle this xenophobic poison, and he's doing it in a way that is increasingly dangerous. And I would suggest that some of his friends, his family members, his allies who pretend to believe in civility go to him and say, cut it out. You are crossing the line. This is no longer politics. This is dangerous for our country,
you say it's
and we deserve better.
You say it's dangerous, and you're obviously in the political opposition to this president, but you're also a government official with an oath to uphold the Constitution. When you see another government official urging on people in that crowd to chant that way, does it concern you that it could amount to incitement?
Certainly, I think it demonstrates sort of a reckless disregard for human life and a depraved indifference to the safety of those four members of Congress. He can disagree with their perspectives. He should not be jeopardizing their safety and well-being in a country, one, where we have far too many guns, more than 300 million circulating throughout the country, and we know that there are some sick individuals, and we've seen some sick incidents, both in terms of targeting Democrats, Gabby Giffords, as well as Republicans in the context of the congressional baseball shooting a few years ago. So this is not even a partisan
Understood.
issue.
Yeah.
This is an issue about decency, civility, and the well-being of public servants, and that's why we have been saying that we have to ensure at the highest levels that our four Congresswomen who have been targeted viciously by him are protected, and we uplift their right to express their own views.
Understood. Brittany, I mentioned the reporting about Donald Trump backing off because I think the details matter, and it's a reminder that cynicism is not the answer, because it is pressure, and for some people, activism and optimism that still, our reporting shows, makes a difference.
Yeah.
I also, I don't want to make light of this, handing out cookies either. We're talking about backing away from terrible, vile things, and we're also tracking something that I want to play for your analysis, which is not all Republicans, of course, are even running away from this. Some are seeing this as a new type of political messaging. Look at this Republican senator using very clearly coded language here at something called the National Conservatism Conference. He's teeing up on a word you may have heard, quote, cosmopolitan. Now, technically, the definition refers to diversity, so it's already pretty clear what he's saying, and many people feel that it is an attack on certain groups. Take a look.
The cosmopolitan elite look down on the common affections that once bound this nation together. The cosmopolitan economy has made the cosmopolitan class an aristocracy. A powerful upper class and their cosmopolitan priorities, the cosmopolitan consensus for the cosmopolitan class. It's time we ended this cosmopolitan experiment.
That is an experiment in using the wrong words and not understanding that words actually mean things. Look, the thing that bothers me about Trump and his cronies is that they have a long history of attacking women of color. And it's really important to say that these comments are not just racist, they're also deeply sexist. They don't just attack people of color, they also specifically go after women of color. And so we need to take the long view. This is Trump's attack on journalist April Ryan, it's his attacks on Maxine Waters, it's even the way that he is locking up these babies and their parents at the border because he sees women of color as the people who reproduce all of these folks that are keeping him from making America white again. So there is a real visceral reason why he has such a hatred for women of color. And our job is not to play nice with this. It is to call it out at every level. It's not to give him any credit when he backtracks, because the other thing that Donald Trump, He is a gaslighter. Gaslighters are people who provoke you, who do harm to you, and then tell you that you were just imagining it. So this is what they're doing on Fox News. They're saying, even though we said send her back, that's not really what we meant. You know, so it's like the abusive boyfriend who says mean things to you and then says, that's the way you took it. That's not the way I meant it.
You know, I didn't know you would bring this up, but we do have some receipts from Fox News for what you're talking
That's
about,
right.
which is it's everyone else's fault but the person who wrote the words
Yes.
that the people chanted. Take a look.
Yes.
They took his words and they turned it into something he didn't mean.
If I were a subversive opponent of the president, I think I would embed myself at a rally and get people to start chanting stuff like that.
He wasn't the one that was chanting it. The crowd themselves started chanting this, and it wasn't the whole crowd. It was a couple of people right there in the front, but he didn't say it.
He did say it. He wrote it and distributed it to millions of people, and then they got it chanted back at him, Afaf.
Yes, time and time again, and we've seen this president's words reverberating through his entire choir, his entire base. And let's not mince our words here today. Words do have consequences, and we see it. We see studies that say every time there's a Trump rally in a particular county, hate crimes go up by over 226%. We see it here in New York, where a mother will be outside at a local Target or a shopping center, and somebody will come up to her and reiterate his exact words, go back home. We see it even from the FBI reports that tell us that hate crimes are up more than they've ever been in a decade. And if you don't want to believe our own government, if you don't want to believe those that are reporting these crimes, then why don't we believe the words of the killers themselves? The guy that went into New Zealand and killed 51 innocent people while they were worshiping cited Donald Trump. In Charlottesville, it was a love with Donald Trump. In the Tree of Life Synagogue, they reference to Donald Trump and his words. So we are not going to mince the words from the actions and say there's no direct relationship. There is a direct relationship. And by the way, standing there for 13 seconds,
yeah.
right? Sometimes an omission of an act is just as bold and as bad as an act itself. And he needs to take responsibility for that as well. And he has the power to do so.
He has the power.
He
has the power. He's the one who said he can shoot on Fifth Avenue.
Exactly.
He obviously
right.
can stare down his folks and say, we're not doing that.
Right.
Or don't do it like that. And Brittany, I think each of you have really covered the ethics and the morality of this, which is important. There are politics to this.
Sure.
And one of the things I've heard from people in our work is that Donald Trump also has brought some strange bedfellows together. None other than my friend Fat Joe, who told me he was surprised to find he was in common cause with Bill Kristol, because they had a different history, but they came together to stand up against what they view as Trump's bigotry. I've got someone else who may not be at that level, but who I don't think you've been partying with all that much from your writings. His name's David Brooks.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Right?
Sure.
I mean, if you and David Brooks 5, 10, 15 years ago, I don't see a lot of
Not at all.
co-signing.
Not at all.
Right?
Sure.
But here is David Brooks today. He sounds like you, or you sound like him, or you two agree on this central question. So I point that out, and I read to you the headline of the new David Brooks piece in the New York Times paper of record, quote, Donald Trump hates America. He suggests a true American is white. Trump's national story is closer to the Russian national story than it is toward our own.
Sure.
And he goes on to take a 2x4 to what he calls this hatred of everything that is good about America.
Well, look, let me get on my Fat Joe and say, lean back and welcome David Brooks to the party. He sounds like me. He sounds like us, our crew. We've been saying this. And part of what has to happen on the Republican is they have to recognize that Donald Trump is their reckoning with decades of rhetoric that has been anti-immigrant, that has been anti-people of color. It has been more subtle. It has been more civil. And the reason that Donald Trump is now horrifying them is because he says every terrible thing, and he says it really explicitly. Do I think he's a more extreme version of the Republican Party? Sure. But do I think he's a logical extension if someone vocalizes the dog whistles they've been engaged in? It's literally the difference between a person who says cosmopolitan and a person who says send her back, but they're talking about the exact same thing. And so we need more Republicans and more conservative writers to stand up and call this man out and say this is not the vision that we have for America. That's the only way this will change. the other thing that we need to say, which is why Donald Trump is so dangerous, he's not averse to inciting crowds to violence in order to serve his purposes. Remember that in the 2016 campaign, he called the people, when he was talking about Hillary Clinton, he said, well, you Second Amendment